Hey guys, welcome to Denny's. Today we're going to jump into 10 tips I believe will help anyone instantly see improvement in their gameplay experience in Monster Hunter Wilds. More specifically, we're going to dive into these tips in no particular order. We'll talk about gameplay tips as well as tips in these settings. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give it a like if you did, subscribe if you feel that I have earned it. If not, I will next time, so stay posted to the channel. Also, check me out on Twitch. I am live nearly every day. I would love to see you guys over there hang out. I can answer questions a lot easier, so yeah, I'd love to see you over there. With that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. All right, so we're going to kick it off with the first tip. This one may seem pretty basic, but use the training area. So the training area is available from the first camp that you access in the base. It's very easy. Just run over to it. You can jump in. This training area does a lot of things. You're going to be able to see combos for each weapon. More or less, the training area is going to be the easiest way to learn weapons and learn combos in the game. I definitely wish I would have taken more advantage of this right when I started the game. I think it would help substantially than just dying over and over to bosses if you're having trouble, to actually learn how to counter, dodge, all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, kind of a basic one, but the training area definitely is one that I think everybody should jump right into. Even if you're far into the game, learning a new weapon with the training area may seem pretty basic, but a lot of us kind of skip it over and just want to play the video game. But yeah, so definitely use the training area is going to be number one. Let's jump over to tip number two. All right, tip number two. Let's talk about food buffs. So if you didn't know, you can get a food buff in this game, and it substantially helps everything about your progress. It gives you a health buff as well as a stamina buff, and it also gives you sometimes a attack buff, defense buff, elemental resistance buff, depending on what you're fighting. You can check it out in your tent, or you can use the portable barbecue grill. You can access the portable barbecue grill from the bottom right. You can use, if you're on controller, left bumper and cycle through with X or B and find the portable barbecue grill. You can even do this while you are actually in the middle of a fight with a ghillie suit. If you didn't know, you can basically put on a ghillie suit and use the portable barbecue grill. But to talk about food buffs, basically the tip here is make sure every time before you go out on a hunt or anything really, make sure to hop into your tent, go grill a meal. Even if it's the one that's recommended that just uses rations, it's going to give you way more of a buff than not having it, and it makes it's just extremely useful. So every time before you're about to go on a hunt, remember to go back into your tent, access the grill menu, and just grill a meal really quickly. You can skip it by pressing select on your controller as well if you don't want to watch the whole cutscene, so that way you don't get tired of that. But yeah, this is going to give you a very nice buff. It's going to help your game quite a bit, just because the amount of stamina that you lose and the amount of HP that you lose if you don't have this, it's kind of annoying to constantly have to keep using your potions and everything. Also, you'll kind of see there's different options for food buffs. You can see you can get certain resistances, you can get armor, or defense, I mean, you can get attack. You can even get certain perks with certain objects that you gather from around the world, and that will segue us over to tip number three. So for tip number three, this is going to be loadouts. So when you go into your tent, there's another option. It's going to be on the second page, and it's going to be loadouts. Now you can change a bunch of different loadouts. Loadouts you can kind of think of as like a preset for certain things. So you can do presets for what's on your hotbar. You can do presets for what equipment you're using, a bunch of different stuff. You can even preset the quick bar as far as your left bumper and directional pad. But the one that I want to talk about is the objects that you have on your hotbar. So that's when you have left bumper and cycle through with X and B. This you can set up to where every time you go back to camp, you select a loadout and basically register that loadout with Y. So pick all the items you want in your bag, and then you can register that loadout. And every time you go on, before you go on a hunt, you go back to the tent, go to this loadout, use this loadout. It'll load everything from your storage into your bars. You can get traps, you can get rations, you can get your bombs to when you want to capture enemies, you can get your cleanser, your antidote, your any more health potions you might want. There's a bunch of stuff, cold drink, hot drink, stuff that'll basically make the game much easier throughout, that you're always going to want to have anyway. Your certain like arm cannon, so like large dung pods, you can get screamer pods, a bunch of stuff that will help throughout the game that you just have. Now obviously the game also does give you some of that stuff. Whenever you are on a quest, it will put it into your Sacred's pouch, which when you're riding your Sacred, you can just press left on the D-pad, and that will actually access all the materials that the game gives you for free, like kind of like freebies whenever you're doing certain quests quests that require traps or require certain things. Also, it'll tell you to look around the area to find stuff, but I find that using a loadout from the very start of the game is extremely helpful because you're going to use a lot of this stuff a lot of the time, and you're never going to have to worry about it if you just go back, select the loadout, and make it as easy as possible in that tent. So yeah, kind of to segue from tip number 2, just kind of go to your tent every time before a hunt, get set up with your grill, get set up with your loadout. You can take it a bit further if you want to set up equipment loadouts, but this is mainly just going to be for that hotbar, and we'll jump over to tip number 4. All right, so segueing over to tip number 4, this is going to be, simply put, gather everything. When you're out and about, so you're running around the world doing hunts, on quests, main stories, optional stories, there's going to be a lot of downtime sometimes, so hold that left trigger, look around, and get ready to just gather everything. You'll notice some things really aren't gatherable. They're like, they'll give you more health, or maybe they'll give you something to shoot out with your arm cannon, but you're looking for things like herbs, mushrooms. Any type of herb or mushroom is always going to help you. You're going to be able to make any kind of like potions or hot drink, cool drink. You're going to need all this stuff for the end game, guys. I promise you. It is so easy to do because of the auto move. We'll get into another tip related to the sacred later. But yeah, gather everything. Literally everything you see will be helpful. Even if it's like a pod that you think you might not use and you pick it up, it might be useful later. So this is a mistake that I made. I wish I would have known a lot sooner. I didn't have like any dung pods to shoo off other monsters whenever I was fighting 3 at the same time. So yeah, gather everything. Herbs, and obviously mushrooms, but just more than the herbs and mushrooms, the beetles, everything. Literally everything on your journey, I recommend gathering. It will substantially help you in the end game, and it's extremely easy to do because of the auto move that the Sacred has, and you can just hold that left trigger and just look around. You can also increase your sensitivity if you're having trouble, kind of like a side tip, I guess. If you're having trouble with this, just feel free to increase your sensitivity in the settings. It can make it so you can move around with your right analog stick a bit faster whenever you're on your camera, but yeah, that's up to each person. But yeah, just gather everything. Very, very straightforward tip, very easy tip, but it'll help you all the way throughout the game, I promise. Let's jump over to tip number 5. All right, and tip number 5, this is going to also kind of segue from 4. As far as items that you think you may need or have not gathered enough, there is a vendor in the main base camp in the Windward Plains. This is going to be Jack. Jack is going to be able to sell a lot of different stuff. I would highly recommend checking him out whenever you stop by there. Sometimes his wares change is what I've noticed. However, it's a good way to pick up things you've been missing if you don't have health pots, which I highly doubt may be a problem for most people. But if you don't have health potions, if you need certain drinks, certain types of ammo, if you're using bows or gun bows, etc., Jack is always going to have stuff to purchase, barrel bombs, things to make traps with, etc. The vendor in the town is a very, very good option, and not a lot of people really utilize that right away. I definitely did not utilize it at all, and I would go around and farm stuff that I was out of. So yeah, Jack, the vendor in the main town. I'm sure he's in other towns as well. I just mainly go to the Windward Plains whenever I am looking to kind of do everything, and obviously we'll talk about some other places as well. But yeah, the vendor is a very good place to gather things that you do not have, that you have not gathered enough materials for, herbs, mushrooms, etc. So yeah, Jack, this will be tip number 5, the vendor in the Windward Plains or elsewhere to basically collect any items you may be low on or missing. So tip number 5, let's jump over to tip number 6. So tip number 6 is a pretty big one. This is going to be change your sacred controls in the settings. So in this game, the mount, your sacred, your bird, your ostrich, whatever you want to call it, it is really annoying. So what I found is basically to change the settings of the sacred. Basically, there's options, and if you head over to the second portion of options, the controls, go over to page 2, you can see on screen the options that I have. I've got call sacred controls, just the sacred controls, the radial menu, and the manual controls, and the route controls. So from top to bottom, it's going to go type 1 for the sacred controls. For the radial menu, you change that from auto move to manual movement. From the sacred manual controls, I do type 2, and then the sacred only route controls type 1. This is what I've noticed to be the easiest to control. Basically, up on the D-pad will turn you into auto move mode, down will take it off. You can use your sprint button down on left stick to actually go faster, and then more or less you can control it whenever you don't have an objective. You can fully control where you're going, but if you set an objective, then that way you can just hit up on the D-pad, go and gather stuff while you're on your way, and it doesn't stop you from moving as long as you have these settings and you are not in auto move mode. You just press down on the D-pad to go out of it. This is the biggest tip probably as far as settings on this list, just because of how much this actually helped me with my Sacred. It's very annoying to run around and basically just get pulled around everywhere without having any control. So this kind of gives that control back to you, and it makes it a little bit easier and definitely a lot more enjoyable to ride around on the Sacred. So that is tip number 6. We'll jump over to tip number 7. And tip number 7 is going to be more of a quick one. This is pretty simple. Use the monster field guide. So if you head over to your options, you go over to the 4th or 3rd row. Basically, it's the map row. So you have like your items and equipment, missions and quests, and then info, and head over to the monster field guide. So monster field guide is basically going to tell you, if you hop into the large monster field guide, it's going to tell you things like weaknesses to the monsters have, basically their injury prone parts, the parts that you can attack for wounds and basically do extra damage. And it's going to tell you all the drop rate frequencies of all their items. The most helpful one is probably the drop rates, so you know what you're going to get. Obviously, having the weaknesses is really nice. For example, if we look at the Chatacabra, he's weak to ice and thunder, and he also has effective status effects. You can see just how effective each one of them is. You can also see which pods work against monsters. So, for example, the Chatacabra, the Flash Pod is very effective towards the Chatacabra. So this gives you an idea at how to fight them, make it easier. Now, obviously, the Chatacabra is a very easy mob, but if you want to look at harder ones, you can see what makes them easier, what parts to target, etc. This is a very underrated system, in my opinion. Not a lot of people talk about it, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows. Use this. This will significantly help your game out, and it actually is very easy to understand. I was kind of taken aback by all the words when I first started playing this game, but this makes it a lot easier because it's pretty simply put, and you can see what to do, how to target weaknesses, how to target wounds and stuff like that, as well as what kind of elements to use to make it easier. So yeah, the monster field guide, you can even look at the small monsters, endemic and aquatic life, to figure out if you want to get the endemic life for certain things that you need in the game later down the line, or small monsters for certain materials that you need as well. But yeah, the large one is definitely going to be the best. We'll jump over to tip number 8. So tip number 8 helped me the most when it comes to actually fighting the monsters, and it will segue over to tip number 9. So for tip number 8, it's going to be Palico equipment. So if you didn't know, your sidekick, your Palico, can actually have equipment. You can craft equipment for him. The game does tell you this. However, there's certain equipment that makes it actually a lot easier, and there's certain equipment that makes it kind of useless. So the equipment I want to talk about is mainly the weapon. Keep in mind, you can use, armor to get certain perks and certain benefits from your Palico. The one I want to really highlight is the weapon. So the weapon that I am using for my Palico and that I've been using for a long time is any weapon with the paralysis element. So the Lalabarina is the spider you kill very early in the game, and you can actually craft a weapon on your Palico with the mats from that monster, and that weapon gives you paralysis. Now, it's not a lot of paralysis that you get on your Palico. However, even the smallest amount of paralysis has a chance to paralyze each monster. This will significantly help to stun monsters. It randomly happens. You can get unlucky. Sometimes it won't happen at all, but this happens a ton in my experience and basically makes the game that much easier. Obviously, depending on your weapon, you might not, think that paralysis is very meta, but for the early game and kind of progression, to make them bosses a lot easier, you can literally just paralyze them, and you get a whole bunch of time where they're just sitting there shocked. You can use your special abilities, you can unleash on them, and they will not do anything to you. So it makes it a ton easier. You get a huge damage window, and this is just from using one little item that costs almost nothing on your Palico. So yeah, highly recommend not only using Palico equipment, checking out the perks that the armor gives you and stuff like that, but definitely use the Lalabarina sword that you get on your Palico. It will help you a lot. You can even take this a bit further and use a weapon on yourself that gives you paralysis. You'll notice that you stun them a lot more. That's what I've done as well. That is kind of the segue. So we'll talk about tip number 9 real quick. So tip number 9 is just that. When you are looking at elements on your main weapon to craft, my recommendation is paralysis. I highly recommend paralysis because not only is the Palico going to help you do that, but if you also have a weapon that has paralysis, you have such a high chance to stun any monster for a long period of time and get a huge damage window off. The one that I used in my case was also the Lalabarina. It was the longsword. However, I do believe Lalabarina does a lot of paralysis no matter what weapon it is. So no matter what weapon you're using, the Lalabarina is very easy to farm early on, and you can obviously make you get a ton of mats from it, so you can make a ton of paralysis weapons if you need to change your weapon up if you're not not happy. Yeah, paralysis is the element that I would highly recommend using. As again, it just makes the experience a lot easier. You get a ton of stuns off, and yeah, just makes it very easy basically to do mobs early, especially hard ones. You'd be surprised sometimes a big attack's going to go off and you get a paralysis off, and then you don't have to worry about it at all, and you just get a huge damage window. So yeah, that is going to be kind of tip number 8 and 9 segued together. And then one of the most important tips we're going to jump into next, and the last but not least. All right, so tip number 10. When you go through the game, you're going to notice that you are getting what's called decorations. A lot of quests, pretty much every quest in the game at a certain point will give you decorations. These are basically gems that you can socket into your gear and any gear. You can socket them into your armor or your weapon. They'll give you perks. They'll give you defense, they'll give you attack. You get a lot of low-level ones right away. A lot of people might sell these. I would highly recommend holding on to every single decoration you get, because when it comes to the end game, you're going to be able to combine these gems. There's a place over in the peaks called the melding pot. You'll see on screen. You can go to her and basically combine a ton of different gems. Sometimes the low-level ones aren't that worth it, but if you combine them, you have a chance to get obviously any gem, and that gem will be in some cases very good. And if you have a ton of these, then you're going to have a ton of chances to get gems that you may want. And obviously you can get the higher quality gems the more you progress in the game. So just hold on to your gems to basically combine. It's very easy to do because you don't have to do anything. Just hold on to them and you won't have to worry about it. Don't basically just kind of leave them on the back burner until you get towards the end game, and you'll be able to combine a bunch of gems and kind of target some gems that you may actually want for certain perks, attacks, defense, etc. It'll make it quite nice because, one, you don't have to worry about the gems while you're getting them. You're like, oh, what are these? Should I be doing this? Yeah, you can socket them every now and then, but for the ones that you don't socket, just keep them, don't sell them, and then you'll eventually be able to combine them. And that is pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed. These are kind of beginner to intermediate tips. I will be coming with more kind of advanced and end game tips for sure. I hope you guys enjoyed though. Like the video if it helped you out. Again, subscribe, if you feel that I've earned it. Follow me on Twitch. Check me out over there. We're live almost every single day. I would love to see you guys over there. We play games like this. We're going to be playing Monster Hunter for a minute. I play the First Descendant. I play a bunch of games, and I would love to see you guys over there. But yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, night, wherever you're at. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm out of here, guys. Peace out. Goodbye.